Snow fell in a slow, whispering drift over Coldwater Ridge, muffling the world beneath a white silence. The mountains loomed like sleeping giants, their peaks veiled in mist and loneliness. Down in the hollow where the trading post stood, a weathered shack of timber and smoke. A pair of small shadows moved beneath the eaves. The hour was just before dawn, that ghostly stillness when even wolves stayed quiet. From the tree line above, Eli Thorne watched. He was a tall man built of hard seasons and harder memories, his beard touched by frost, his coat patched in places where life had tried to tear him apart. Most folks in town called him the Hermit of Coldwater, though once, long ago, he'd been something more, a soldier, a hunter, a man with purpose. Now he lived alone among the pines, where the only voices he heard were the wind and the ghosts of the past. But this morning, something else stirred that silence. Two small figures, girls, crept out from behind the frozen barrels stacked by the post. Their dresses were threadbare, their shoes wrapped in rags. One clutched a tin can, the other dragged a small sack that barely held a few crusts of bread. They moved quickly, practiced in their shame, taking what the world had thrown away. Eli frowned beneath his hat brim. He'd seen them before, fleeting shapes at the edge of town when the snow first started to fall. They never spoke to anyone, never begged loudly, just came and went like winter spirits. From the porch of the trading post, the old merchant, Harlan Reed, stepped out and spotted them. He shouted something sharp, something cruel, the kind of words men used when they'd forgotten compassion. The girls scattered into the dark like frightened deer, vanishing toward the forest's edge. Ellie's jaw tightened. There was something in the smaller one's limp, something in the way the older girl turned back to shield her, that stirred something he thought long dead inside him. He'd seen desperation before, in war, in hunger, in the mirror. But this was different. This was innocence fighting to survive in a world that had already decided they weren't worth saving. When the town lights flickered out behind him, Eli rose from his crouch and shouldered his rifle. The snow crunched softly beneath his boots as he followed the faint prints leading north. They were small, uneven, already filling with fresh flakes. He knew they wouldn't last long in this storm. A bitter wind swept down from the ridge, carrying with it the lonely cry of a hawk. The forest seemed to whisper warnings. Don't follow, Eli. Leave ghosts to their own kind. But the mountain man couldn't turn away. Not this time. He adjusted his coat and pressed deeper into the wilderness, his breath clouding in the cold. Somewhere ahead, two lost souls were running from something he didn't yet understand. And though he didn't know it, what waited for him beyond those trees would shake the last pieces of his hardened heart and change everything he believed about mercy, guilt, and redemption. The forest around Coldwater Ridge lay under a heavy blanket of snow, the kind that bent the pines so low their boughs scraped the frozen ground. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys in the distance, marking the sparse cabins that dotted the valley like lonely sentinels. The town itself huddled along the main road, its wooden buildings lined with frost and the stubborn pride of men who had long ago decided that mercy was a luxury no one could afford. Windows glimmered with candlelight, but inside, hearts were often colder than the wind that cut through the streets. Eli Thorne's cabin stood apart, tucked at the edge of the forest where the trees grew thick and the snow lay deep. A single plume of smoke drifted from its stone chimney, hinting at the warmth inside. Though that warmth was mostly a memory, Eli had long ago learned the ways of solitude. He bore the invisible scars of battles fought in distant fields and the visible ones from a love he had lost, Clara, whose laughter once filled this cabin and whose absence had hollowed it out. Inside, the walls were bare but for a few carved shelves holding tools, rifles, and a single rocking chair that creaked in the draft. The echo of Clara's laughter lingered in the corners, mingling with the whistle of the wind through the cracks. Every step Eli took across the floor was a reminder of silence he had chosen, a life lived between survival and memory. Outside, the snow continued to fall, heavy and relentless, blanketing the world in white and making every sound muffled and distant. The forest seemed eternal, unyielding, and yet somehow protective, a barrier between Eli and the town that had long forgotten the softer sides of its people. Here, in this frozen wilderness, he existed on the edge of the world, a man both feared and respected, his morality as steadfast as the mountains, but tempered by the loneliness that settled into his bones like frost. The twin girls moved like shadows through the frozen streets of Coldwater, their small hands clutching whatever scraps of food they could find. Anna and May, barely 10, had learned to survive on whispers and leftovers, avoiding the townsfolk who muttered behind closed doors, calling them wild children as if naming them so could strip away their humanity. Some claimed they were the children of a notorious outlaw, abandoned to the wilderness after their father's violent life ended. Others whispered of darker secrets that no one dared speak aloud. The truth was simpler and crueler. Two little girls trying to live in a world that had already written them off. Eli had seen them before, perched on the edge of the trading post or darting across frozen fields. Their fear was tangible, a living thing that made him tighten his jaw. He had lived through battles that tore men apart, through winters that had frozen friends into silence, but this quiet, desperate struggle struck him differently. Something inside him stirred, a part long thought dead, a longing to protect and redeem. One morning, with the wind biting hard and snow crunching under his boots, Eli approached the girls carefully, a small loaf of bread held in his rough hands. "Here, eat," he murmured, his voice low and steady. Their eyes widened, fear mixed with hunger, and before he could take another step, they bolted, disappearing into the forest like frightened deer. Eli watched them go, his chest heavy. He understood now that earning their trust would not be easy. It never was for those who had been hurt before, but something in their small, trembling forms called to him, compelling him to follow, to protect, and perhaps to heal both them and himself. Eli stepped cautiously into the forest, the girls' tiny footprints barely visible beneath a fresh layer of snow. Each step he took carried him deeper into the silent wilderness, where the trees loomed like dark sentinels and the wind whispered secrets only the mountains understood. Frozen streams cut across his path, their icy surfaces cracking softly underfoot, and steep ridges forced him to climb with careful deliberation, every muscle straining against the cold and the weight of the unknown. With each passing moment, the chase became more than a pursuit of two lost children. It became a journey into the corners of his own heart, into memories he had buried beneath years of isolation and regret. As he pressed on, Eli noticed signs that made his pulse quicken. Larger boot prints intersected the twins' delicate tracks, marring the pristine snow. A torn sleeve snag on a branch, and the faint smell of smoke lingered in the frosty air. He froze, listening, every nerve alert. Somewhere among the pines, unseen eyes followed his movements. The forest seemed alive, aware of him, watching, waiting, testing his resolve. The tension mounted as shadows shifted between the trunks, and Eli realized the forest was no longer just a backdrop. It was a stage for forces both natural and human, a place where danger and hope intertwined. Every step carried the weight of consequence, and every crunch of snow beneath his boots reminded him that the story he sought to uncover could change everything he thought he knew about survival, trust, and the fragile bonds of the heart. The forest opened into a narrow ravine, shadowed and silent except for the soft sigh of the wind through the pines. There, half hidden beneath a fallen tree and the weight of winter's snow, stood a cabin, crooked, battered, and nearly swallowed by the wilderness. Its roof sagged, its walls leaned at impossible angles, and the scent of smoke and damp wood drifted faintly through the broken windows. Ellie's heart tightened. This was no ordinary hideout. Something urgent and fragile waited inside. He approached cautiously, rifle lowered but ready, and pushed open the splintered door. The sight that met him stole his breath. The twins huddled beside a frail woman, her skin pale and lips trembling, her breath shallow. She clutched the girls protectively as if holding them together could hold the world at bay. When her eyes fluttered open, they landed on Eli, a flicker of recognition passing through them before weakness dragged her down again. In her trembling hand, she held a silver locket, engraved with the initials CR, the same as Ellie's late fiancée. Clara, shock coursed through him. Could this fragile, dying woman be Clara's sister? Could these tiny, fearful girls be somehow connected to the woman he had loved and lost? The questions collided with his heart, leaving him momentarily breathless. Caught between disbelief and the pull of destiny, fate had led him here, into this hidden cabin, to confront a past he thought was buried and a future he hadn't yet imagined. The woman's voice was a fragile rasp, barely rising above the howl of wind through the ravine. I should have found you sooner," she whispered, her eyes flicking toward Eli, a mixture of fear and recognition lingering in their depths. She spoke of a life lived in shadow, a husband who had ruled with fists and fire, a man who left her no choice but to vanish into the wilderness, with her daughters clinging to her skirts. For years she had wandered, hiding from a world that sought to punish her, avoiding Eli because she feared that involving him would only bring more danger. The twins pressed closer, their small bodies trembling, as if they too sensed the weight of truth settling over the cabin. Eli knelt beside them, brushing the snow from their tangled hair, and spoke softly. "They'll be safe with me, I promise." The words were simple, but they carried the gravity of every battle he had survived, every loss he had endured. Outside, the storm bellowed against the fragile walls. Yet inside, a quiet redemption took root. Ellie's heart, long hardened by grief and solitude, felt warmth seep into its frozen corners. Here, amidst the snow and fear, he found a purpose that transcended mere survival. Protecting these girls, raising them, guarding the memory of the woman he had loved, became a mission that gave meaning to all the years of loneliness. As the dying woman exhaled her last breath, a calm settled over the cabin. In that quiet, sorrowful moment, Eli understood that love and redemption could rise even from the coldest, harshest winters of the soul. The quiet that had settled over the cabin shattered with the crunch of heavy boots on snow. Ellie's heart tightened as he recognized the gate, wide, purposeful, and ruthless. The outlaw, the man who had haunted the twins' nightmares and forced their mother into hiding, had tracked them through the frozen wilderness, drawn by the scent of survival and vengeance. Snowflakes whipped through the air as he approached, the wind carrying the low, cruel laugh that had once chilled the girls' nights. Eli moved to the cabin door, rifle in hand, his breath clouding in the frigid air. The twins huddled behind him, eyes wide, their tiny fingers gripping each other's. The outlaw kicked the door, splintering wood, and stepped inside, fury burning in his eyes. A tense silence hung for a heartbeat before gunfire rang out, echoing through the trees. Eli was grazed on the shoulder, pain sharp and biting, but he didn't falter. Every ounce of strength, every scar earned in battles past, anchored him as he defended the girls. The standoff ended with the outlaw pinned beneath a fallen beam, defeated by both his hubris and Ellie's relentless protection. Anna and May stared in awe, tears freezing on their cheeks as the man who had tormented them finally met the justice they had long deserved. In that moment, Eli understood that his strength was no longer for vengeance alone, but for shielding the innocent, a redemption earned not through anger, but through courage, love, and unyielding resolve. By the time spring arrived, the snow had retreated like a vanquished enemy, revealing the valley in gentle greens and golds. Streams, once frozen and silent, gurgled with life, and wildflowers peeked through the thawing soil as if celebrating new beginnings. Eli worked tirelessly at the edge of the valley, raising timber and stone to build a cabin that was sturdy and warm, a home, not a fortress. Each hammer strike, each careful cut of wood, carried purpose, the promise of safety and permanence for the two small girls who now called him father. Anna and May ran through the fields, their laughter ringing like wind chimes, unburdened by the fear that had once defined them. They helped Eli gather firewood, feed the chickens, and tend a small garden, learning the rhythm of life that the mountain man had once known only in solitude. In their eyes, he saw trust blooming where terror had once lived, a reflection of the care and love he now freely gave. Eli himself changed, quietly and profoundly. The once feared hermit became a guardian of hearts, not just a survivor of winters. He tended to the cabin, the land, and the girls with steady hands. And in the slow warmth of the valley, his own heart began to thaw. The wilderness that had been a place of loneliness now felt like a cradle of hope, a testament to resilience, love, and the quiet redemption that comes when one chooses to protect rather than hide. As the sun dips low over the valley, painting the snowmelt in gold and amber, I want you to pause and imagine yourself in Ellie's boots. To small children, shivering and alone, vanish into the vast, merciless wilderness. The town turns its back, leaving fear and pride to dictate their fate. What would you have done? Would you have followed them, braving the cold and the unknown, risking everything to protect lives so fragile? Or would you have walked away, leaving them to the harshness of a world that often shows no mercy? Think on that as you watch the wind sway the pines and hear the quiet echo of footsteps that once mattered so much. Courage and kindness aren't always easy. Sometimes they demand everything we have got in the end. The true measure of a person in the Wild West wasn't found in the draw of a gun or the toughness of their hands, but in the courage of their heart. Ellie's journey reminds us that even the most broken souls can be mended with compassion, and that redemption often comes quietly when we least expect it. Like the first thaw of spring after a long, bitter winter, small acts of care can ripple through lives, changing destinies in ways no one could foresee. If Ellie's story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more tales of hope and redemption from the Wild West.